Okay.
All right, Marie, thank you for the handoff. We appreciate the opportunity to come and speak about Proposition B. I think this is an opportunity for the city of Kirksville to move things forward and to take care of some really critical needs that are happening right now. We've got several folks from the city staff who aren't just here to speak, but who've also been integrally involved in making this proposal happen and doing the research and helping council to be informed on the decision that they ultimately made. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Ashley Young, our Director of Community and Economic Development. Ashley.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, as the mayor said, the city council voted to place on the general municipal election ballot this coming April a 3/8% sales tax for the purpose of constructing purpose-built infrastructure. That is why it's called Proposition B, purpose-built. Now, what does that mean exactly? Well, the reality is that the majority of city facilities are housed in locations that were not purpose-built. So we will get into that this morning. But just like how the fire station was originally a car dealership and the police station was originally a bank, so too, we'll get started this morning, was City Hall actually constructed as a post office in 1905. And in 1963, during the Kennedy administration, the city purchased the building and moved into the former post office when the new post office, the post office that we use today, was constructed. And a lot has happened since 1962, in terms of the services that the city offers and that our residents expect. So, if you've ever been to City Hall, and I assume most of you have, and you've attended some kind of meeting, and you've wanted to participate in your local government, you've wanted your voice to be heard, you've went into the council chambers and you noticed that number one, the space is not large enough. If you have a community issue or event where folks want to come out and participate in their local government, it's easily crowded, it gets hot because it's so small, and there's even a pillar in the way of the audience from certain seats to actually see the dais, to see their city council at work. So it's a very restricted space. And that is to say nothing about the Americans with Disabilities Act. Now, we have tried very hard over a number of decades now to comply as best we can with the Americans with Disabilities Act across all our city facilities. But the reality is that it isn't right that folks with disabilities who have some kind of mobility issue, who may be in a wheelchair, can't enter through the front of the building. They have to go around back into the alley, get into an elevator in the alleyway, then come up to the right floor, which in this case, if we're talking about the council chambers, would be the first floor, and then come all the way back to the front of the building to access that council chambers. There are just basic mobility issues like that, that while we have strived to comply with the ADA, it is difficult to say that our building is truly ADA compliant, and certainly is not honoring the spirit of the ADA, where everyone, regardless of their abilities, should be able to access their municipal government. And then certainly, as we talked about, since 1962, citizens in Kirksville expect a whole lot more from their local government. But our ability to grow in that space, to offer residents more services, is very restricted. We're out of space, essentially. And that's what it comes down to. So, Proposition B, if approved, would in part, one of the projects that it would fund would be an addition to City Hall to the south, the land that we own between the Sue Ross Arts Center, home of the Kirksville Arts Association, and the existing City Hall. Despite some of the rumors you might have heard on social media, the existing City Hall will not be torn down. It will be renovated. It is a historic structure. It is a local landmark. We appreciate that building and its history and the role it's plays in our community very much, and so that would be renovated and connected through this walkway here to this addition to the south. So it would also, I should note, for those history lovers out there, it won't just be cobbled onto the side of the building. The architectural integrity of that building will be respected but connected to this new addition. So let's talk about what that addition will include. Number one, we just spent some time talking about the council chambers. It would include a larger council chambers. That would be on the single level that you would access from the outside. It wouldn't be any steps or anything like that. It would be larger. Not only could you hold council meetings, but you could hold the meetings for the various boards and commissions for the city. As it is right now, if the entire Planning and Zoning Commission shows up for a commission meeting, there isn't enough room for them at the dais. And the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting isn't the only commission that faces that problem. Now, unfortunately, most of the time there's one or two people who can't make it for various reasons. But when we have a full house, there's literally not enough room now as it is. So that larger council chambers would enable us to hold those meetings and also serve other purposes in the community. If you've ever attended any of the various town halls or forums, candidates forums that the Kirksville Area Chamber of Commerce hosts, you'll know that they've bounced all over the community over the years. When I was in college at Truman, we used to have them, and I think Violet Hall, they've been at the dental school lately. They've moved all over the community because, frankly, the city isn't able to host them. Neither is the county. So we would have the larger council chambers that could host those kind of forums and town halls and events of that nature. And then, as we meet here this morning, it's 1 degree. The wind chill is something like -11, or at least it was last night. It's ridiculously cold out there. Whenever this happens, every single year, the city is approached. Do we have a warming center? Do we have somewhere where people can go to get out of the cold? And vice versa in the summer when it's extremely hot. Do you have a cooling center? Do you have somewhere where people could go? This space could serve that purpose, because right now we don't. And the answer there is that we do not have that. And so this could serve as that as well. So the rest of the addition would have offices for our finance department, for administration, existing city hall. With that renovation would house codes and planning and engineering. But what I really want to get into as a great segue into our next presenter, our Fire Chief John Cook, is the EOC and E911 center that would be in the basement of this new building. So here's a floor plan. You saw that really quick there, flashback for that first floor that I was talking about. But then go ahead and move on. That would be that second story. That addition does have a second story in the back. That would be home to administration. But in any case, that basement expansion, this would be a new purpose-built 911 center. And John will talk about the importance of that as 911 in the future moves to a more regional approach. I'll also talk about the storm shelter that would be incorporated into this building, which we do not currently have of any kind, and then a true emergency operations center, which would also be housed in this building, which really, and again, John will get into the details with those things, but that makes this expansion of City Hall just as crucial a piece of this entire project, this proposition for our emergency services, arguably as a police station and a fire station as well. So with that, I'll hand it over to our Fire Chief, John Cook.
Yeah, good morning. I'll hit on 911 first. So right now the 911 center is in the basement of City Hall. We have 3 positions. There's no more space to expand. And in the future, you're gonna see 911 centers, you're gonna see a lot of consolidation in rural Missouri. It's really difficult and expensive for a community, a county like Southern County or Putnam County or the smaller counties, to fund and staff their own 911 center. So we're seeing it across the state. We're in the middle of a project that'll take care of the technology that allows it to happen seamlessly. We're gonna see a lot of consolidation. You're gonna see a single larger 911 center providing 911 dispatching services to a lot of surrounding counties. So provided adequate space, we have very limited capacity right now to take on any additional outside contracted services. There's a couple we're entertaining now. There's a couple of interested parties that we're working on, but that would be the limit of it without additional space. So doing this would allow us to, in the future, sign contracts with other counties and provide dispatching services for 3 or 4 counties in that area. Obviously, bring those revenue dollars into the city and help offset the cost of the service for our citizens. And I will say, I'll always take the opportunity to pitch them. 911 dispatchers are the unsung heroes of the emergency services world. Without them, the whole system falls apart. And they need quality facilities with all the right equipment they need to get the job done. So you see us running around all the time doing stuff, but they're the ones that really keep the wheels on. So Emergency Operations Center, we don't have one. We have a little space in the basement of this building that isn't generator protected, that we can kind of use. We used to use the basement of the police department, but if we had to activate the Emergency Operations Center, we'd have to kick the cops out, and then they wouldn't have any place to work. And it's just not a viable solution, so this would provide dedicated space for an Emergency Operations Center. Primarily, you'll see an EOC stand up when there's severe weather, like the tornado of 09, things like that, when there's large-scale emergencies that we need to deal with. Primarily, it's a hub for logistics. You get all the players together, local government, emergency response agencies, and you can coordinate the response, and more importantly, coordinate the recovery. So we just really don't have a viable space to do that. This would provide for that space, and it would double as a storm shelter for folks in City Hall and the surrounding area. The next piece I'm going to talk about is a development on at the corner of Highway 6 and Industrial Road. You'll see three components there: a fire station, a training site, and then the community center. I'll get into each one of those individually. Go ahead. All right. First and foremost, the fire station. So Kirksville is about 14.7 square miles. That's a really, really large area to try to cover with a single fire station. We had two fire stations back in the early 80s. Prior administrations, for whatever reason, decided that that was not a viable solution. They shut down that second fire station and eventually consolidated into the single location we're at on North Franklin Street in 2003. So a fire in your home or your business can go from ignition, so a trash can on fire or whatever, electrical problem, from that to flashover, which is where everything in the room reaches the temperature where it all bursts into flames in about 3 to 5 minutes. So we have a response time goal of 4 minutes. And you'll see this graphic right here. This is our location on North Franklin Street, and the red shaded area is the area that we can get to in about 4 minutes. That's a 1.5 road mile shaded area, but when you factor in dispatching and turnout time and drive time, that's where we can rationally get to in about 4 minutes. And you see all this area in the city that's outside of that area. So time is a critical element of response for the fire department, more so a lot of times in EMS, just simply because of how fast the fires grow, particularly fires in modern buildings with lots of petroleum-based products. Almost every piece of furniture in your home and your business is made from petroleum, and it turns into combustible liquid when it gets hot. So really, all of our peer cities, Hannibal is about the same size physically, a little bit bigger, about 20,000 population. Ottumwa is a little bit bigger in population, a little bit bigger geographically, not very much. Moberly is smaller geographically and population-wise, and they all have multiple fire stations. Moberly has 2 fire stations, Hannibal has 3. And we run more calls than many of those departments. All right, so it's actually, this would be the proposed coverage with the North Fire Station added. And it would get us to about 70% of the community, not quite, I think about 68% of the city within that range. And we're evaluating the current Station 2 on North Franklin Street about alternatives there. We have problems with flooding at that fire station. So this wouldn't be the final solution, but a fire station on the north side of town would be the first step in solving that response problem, that coverage problem. And obviously the north side of town where all the development has been recently, so that's, if we have to make one first step, that's the step we're gonna take. Again, we've had a lot of flooding issues. It's flooded every year since we moved in 2003. I have no idea if it was a known problem when it was a car dealership or not. I don't know. But I helped move the stuff from South Franklin here to North Franklin Street, and we've been wet every year since then. So unfortunately, there's just not any way to fix it. Preliminary engineering assessments, it appears as though it's going to cost more to fix the storm drainage problem than it would be to build a new facility elsewhere. So again, this doesn't solve that problem, but it's the first step in extricating us out of that problem. And we can't store everything that we have. If you drive by North Franklin Street, you'll see the fire station, you'll see a whole bunch of auxiliary, specialty equipment that just sits out in the parking lot. So we've been very fortunate to get all that equipment replaced on grants in the last 2 years. So we just need additional space where we can get it inside, get it under a roof, and keep it usable for the foreseeable future. We do have a training site on West Burton Street, clear out the end of West Burton. It was developed, kind of a homegrown development in the early 90s, and it's just not safe for use anymore. There's a burn building or a smoke building. and a tower out there that neither of which are usable anymore. They weren't really built, they weren't properly built from the beginning. They don't have proper thermal protection in them, and we're not able to use them anymore. So for us to do live fire training, which is a requirement, when we train new firefighters, we have to borrow a mobile trailer from either Hannibal Fire Department or the state, and neither of them are terribly comprehensive and do a very good job of providing a good training environment. So, in the back of that, you saw that there was a training tower back there. That would be a burn building, purpose-built burn building, a training tower at the, on the east side of the development there. That would only be fire department training facility. Police department would use it as well for room clearing or repelling, those kinds of tactical trainings. And this whole development as a whole then would serve as a regional training site. When COVID came around, we had this really big problem with access to training. A lot of emergency services training was unavailable or inaccessible, and there's a really big, Northeast Missouri is the rural part of the state. It's very, very difficult to get training up here. We have a really good relationship with the Division of Fire Safety with the state. They can send a lot of state-funded training up here, but we have to have the facilities to do it. And we really just don't have any of the facilities for actual live fire training. So developing a regional training site like that gives us the opportunity not only to train our personnel better, but also surrounding areas that help us in our time of need. And then we can draw people from outside the community and host regional training events or even statewide training events. Provide those facilities and then bring those visitors in that are going to spend their money in the community, and bring funding in directly to the emergency services by providing training. I have fire departments waiting to send the firefighters to us to train them, but I don't have the facilities to train them in. They're sending their firefighters to Kansas to get trained because that's the closest place that they can get them trained that has a facility. So other departments in the area have facilities, but they don't outsource their training. They train their own people or they're part of a community college. So there's a big lack of access to training that we just don't have the facilities to provide. The other piece of that, that's a general layout of the fire station. Very basic fire station. Granted, this apparatus bay is relatively large. That's simply because there's so much equipment we have that sits outside. So to accommodate that, that would provide adequate space for all of the fire departments, special equipment, as well as the stuff that the police department has as well that needs to be indoors that they don't have a place to put it. Otherwise, just a standard fire station for up to 4 people, and one administrative office. All right, so the third component of that development up there is a community center. The city got a grant for a big piece of this. I'll get to the next one. One large room with accordion dividers. You could break it up into 2 or 3 separate classrooms as necessary. It would be obviously open to the community for any kind of event they wanted to have in it, have a prep kitchen and general support areas. And then this building would also double as classroom space for any of the regional training activities. Much of it would be practical evolutions outdoors at the training tower, but obviously there's often a classroom component to a lot of it. So this could be a multi-purpose building used for all kinds of, any kind of event where you need large groups. Capacity was, I think, north of 100 people with tables and chairs. So, as I mentioned, the pandemic created a lot of challenges. Didn't force us. We were already headed that way anyway, but we had to bring a lot of training in-house. So we can provide. I can provide more comprehensive training to a new firefighter at Kirksville than they can in Columbia Fire Department. So it's a really good opportunity for us. We have the facilities we can start pulling people in and bring some of that revenue back into the city. All right, I think I'll keep the discussion. Morning.
Austin, back to Thursday. So one of the things that, with this storage, this apparatus bay, this isn't just a garage, it's not just a cover. This is something they can actually run the engines for all the fire trucks and all the equipment in there while they're working on it in the winter time. So they have a day like this, they've got to do regular maintenance on it. Same thing for the police end of it, the police storage, it's a secured storage facility. What that means to me is that if I have a vehicle that we seize and we have to get a warrant from a judge on to search, we now have a place that I can store it, lock it in, and not have it sitting out in the weather in just a fenced-in area, right? That jeopardizes the evidence itself. It makes it very difficult to prove a case later on. This gives us a secure place to put it where we know where it is. We can maintain that chain of custody, get a warrant, and do a search without elements affecting any evidence. The community center, John mentioned a lot of different things about training. For the police end of it, we would be able to host our own training events. We now are gonna have 3 first responders. You've got ACAB, you've got fire, you've got police, looking at regional training. Just like the fire department, any place we go to train, the closest we can go is Columbia. And they don't have all the courses we need. We are required to have so many hours every year to maintain our post license. Makes it very, very difficult when I have to send officers all the way to Columbia or Des Moines to get the training. There's nothing up here in this area. This would open it up where we could have regional training for the entire area. We could bring in the drug task force and bring in 13 to 16 counties and all get together and we can look at intelligence. We can actually work on crime because it affects everybody in the area. As far as the police department goes, our current department was an old bank. It was built in, I believe, 1963, somewhere in there. There's a lot of things that don't work with it. It wasn't designed to be a police station, it was designed to be a bank. It's got a lot of positives. It's got a vault in there that we do use for record storage. It's got a vault in there down in the lower level we use for evidence storage, but it's limited in size, it's limited in space. There's new requirements out that force us to maintain evidence for longer periods of time, right? Allowing for appeals and that kind of thing through the court system. And that makes it very difficult for us to maintain that. We did invest in some rolling shelves to kind of expand that space out, but again, we're overflowing in evidence. As far as renovations go, there just isn't any more space to go. Some of the things we deal with, we've got a flight of stairs, so all of our booking area is downstairs. What this forces the officers to do is if they have someone they've arrested that is combative or intoxicated, they have to take them down a flight of stairs, which makes it dangerous for everybody involved, including the arrestee and the officers. Imagine trying to take someone who is intoxicated down a flight of stairs and worrying about their safety as well as yours. So that's one thing we do have to deal with. There is no ADA accessibility in there. We have an old dumbwaiter I believe the bank used to move boxes of coin up and down. That dumbwaiter it's died and they don't make parts for it anymore, so we can't even go back and retrofit that to fix it. This is the area we have for the officers to do the reports. They eat their meals here. They also process evidence on this same table. So they could be processing something with blood evidence or methamphetamine or other drugs and then sit down and have a meal at that same table. So this table gets cleaned regularly. They have to wipe it down before they do anything. And again, there just isn't the space there as far as doing reports and maintaining the evidence. This is the area that we have for booking. So when we book somebody, we take them down to this little room here. We have a chair right there next to them. So the person you're arresting is sitting in a chair next to you while you're sitting on the computer. So there isn't a secure place to actually have an arrestee. If they are violent or become violent, I could have an officer down in this basement all by themselves. One issue with this, and this is a national standard, is that when you arrest someone, they shouldn't have access to the rest of the building. They should be in an area where you do your booking, if you release them there, they don't have access to the rest of the building. Well, everybody we arrest comes in through the entire building. They have access to all the locker rooms, they have access to civilian staff. It just makes it very unsafe for everyone around. We've, again, running out of space, we've got sergeants doubled up in offices, so their chairs butt up against each other when they're working together. So it makes it, again, there just isn't room to expand. This next picture on the left over here, sorry, the right, go right. This is our computer crime lab. So as part of the Internet Crimes Against Children, we're the hub for 16 counties. We handle all the cases that come in. We have a grant that provides for the funding for it. This is the closet we have to do computer forensics out of. It just isn't sufficient space to do a computer forensics. You can see because it's a bank and the walls are so thick, we couldn't drill holes in the walls to put venting in. So we have an air conditioner mounted in there to try to cool the computers down to pull air in from the outside. Again, it's definitely not the best space for computer forensics. This is the locker room we've got, and this is upgraded since I've gotten here. We've got some new lockers, we put in some flooring to cover up the flooring that was in there. But again, if you have 2 people opening the lockers up to get dressed, they're bumping into each other. There isn't sufficient space, there's no place to sit, it's just, we've crammed as much in there as we can. On the right hand side, you've got, this is the female locker, a women's locker room, and I'm out of space. If I hire one more female officer, I don't have a locker for her at this point. I'll have to shuffle some things around and try and get a locker in there for them. And again, in this particular space, we have one shower, which is in the other, bathroom. And when you have officers that are dealing with everything from blood evidence to, bodily fluids or whatever they get on them, they need a place to rinse off quick and change uniform before they go out on the road. We just don't have the facilities to do that. This is an example of making do with what we have. This drying cabinet right here, this is a forensic dryer. In other words, if we bring something in that has blood evidence on it, we have to dry it. You can't just put it in a bag, it will rot and you'll get mold and you'll lose the evidence, you'll lose the DNA off of it. This allows us to dry it. It was a grant purchase, but we have to shove it into a closet. This is a very expensive piece of equipment that is just shoved into a space because there's no other place to put it. And this, again, this shows the closet that it's in. You've got a biohazard fridge and freezer over there. If we find a bat with rabies, we have to save it and send it out. That's where we have to store these kinds of things. So the new proposed station, it's at Missouri and Maine. It's an existing parking lot owned by the city. So that cut the cost down quite a bit, having the land already. The design of the new station, there'd be one entrance available on both corners, or both streets coming in, or the public could come in with a floor plan. So what this allows is the public can come in, go to the vestibule, they have the reception that they can do all of their dog tags, they can do all their administrative duties, or administrative things that they want to do with the police department. But if they need to report a crime, we actually have a place that they can go in and sit down and report a crime. Right now, if someone comes in and reports some sensitive crime, let's say it's a sex assault or a robbery or something along those lines, we have no place to sit down and take a report from them. We have to do it in the lobby with other people walking in to get dog tags or other administrative duties. So it's very difficult to get someone to open up and tell us exactly what happened if it's a sensitive crime when we don't have a private space to do that in. Something else this does, this allows us to keep everything secure. So when we look at evidence handling, we look at chain of custody for things, nobody has access to any part of the building where there's evidence held, other than sworn officers. This also gives us a dedicated computer crime lab, right next to the IT section for the entire building. And as you can see, this is basic. This was designed by a company that does nothing but police departments and fire departments. They know exactly what we need, exactly the space we need to do it, and it allows us to take the space we have, break it down to exactly what we need, allow a little room for expansion for a future patrol lieutenant and some other general staff. But besides that, you can see it's pretty basic that we're looking at. Okay, one big difficulty we're seeing nationwide right now is recruiting and retention of officers. So right now we're about 90% staff and have never been above that since I've been here. There are other departments, let's say Columbia, they're down about 80 officers right now. It's just nationwide recruiting of officers is very, very difficult. To bring somebody in and take them on a tour through the bank when you're trying to say, come on aboard, this is the department you want to work for, again, not real easy to do a lot of recruiting that way. We're one of the highest paid in the region, so we do our best to compensate the officers, but when you have a facility that just doesn't fit the needs of the police department, again, it's very, very difficult to recruit. I'm going to turn it over to Lacey from here.
I'm Lacey King. I'm the finance director for the city of Kirksville. And when Ashley, at the very start of this, mentioned planning, this has been in the works for several years. The first year that we started setting money aside for a project, we have expanded on it every year, but that was in 2016. So this is not something that the city has taken lightly. We have planned for years on how do we need to move forward? How do we need to set our community up in order to move forward for our future community? And so how this has evolved is you'll see the breakdown of each one of these facilities. And when we thought about the proposed project cost, we worked with different entities. We worked with the entity that gave us the plan for City Hall. We also worked with the the designer that does the police stations, the fire stations, the community center. But one thing that we know we needed to take care of on Industrial Road where we're proposing this community center and the fire station, it's green space. There is no infrastructure in this facility. Whether the city moved forward with building a community center or if we develop it ourselves, we still need to put the infrastructure in. And that's why the cost is so much higher, because we have to put water mains in, roads. It's just scratch. And so what we did when we were estimating these costs, we thought about everything that we would have to have. We don't want to go back to our citizens and say, well, we told you this was gonna cost X amount of dollars, but now we've decided it's going to cost $2 million more, $3 million more. So these numbers have been thought about, they've been planned, and right now we have total cost of $31.955 million. But that also includes contingency in there. That's one thing that the city does for every project that it moves forward with. It builds in contingency for unknowns. We were talking about getting a grant for the community center. Well, one of the steps that have changed with grant funding is now everything has to go through cultural resources. Well, that's something that you have to pay another firm to come in and tell you, yep, the site's good, we can do it. If we need to do engineering, if we need to do compression testing for the dirt to see if it will hold these facilities. So right now, that is our estimated cost for all of the facilities. And then we talked about how are we going to fund this? How can the city make this happen for us? We looked at several different modules on how we were going to do it and modes of payment. And what we determined is the city itself already has 21% of this project funded. We have not taken this lightly. It's not something that we wanted to take to our citizens without a plan to move forward. And by having 21% of $31 million, we want our citizens to know we've been thinking about this. This is something we've been working for. But one thing that we learned during COVID, besides the fact that our first responders cannot get adequate training, is that building costs increased 40%. So when we were looking at these projects and we were wanting to move forward with that, we were using prices and we were trying to get our target goal based on old prices. So after COVID, when everything went up 40%, working with council, we determined that now was the time we need to do this. If we are going to do this, if we are going to move forward. And so how do we do that? We will need to issue debt of $25 million in order to fund all of these projects. And we want to do it as one lump sum project because building costs are not going to decrease. I will be highly surprised if they do. I would like for someone to call me out and say, no, you were wrong. Look at the decrease in prices. And I would be like, yes, I was wrong. But I don't think that's going to happen. So that's why it's important that we move forward with all of these projects at once. And so how are we going to do that? Kirksville is very unique. We love our community and we're proud of our community, but it's very unique. As we've been talking, Northeast Missouri is a unique situation in the fact that there is not a larger city within 30 miles from us. So basically, Kirksville is a hub for a 60-mile radius around us. So every day, we have at least 5,000 to 10,000 people come into our city. Even though our population has only changed by 30 people in the last 10 years, we have to remember the census was taken during COVID when all the students were gone. But we still have people that come to town every day, they work, they come to the doctor, they come for education. And so even though we're only a town of 17,000 people, we still have to have the infrastructure and services for a town of 25,000 people every day. And part of that is being able to have law enforcement when people come to town and have a fender bender, or if they come to shop and they, are having chest pains, or they have an accident. Everyone who comes to Kirksville expects service, they expect roads, and they expect the community to be able to help them. So we determined that the best way to do this would be to share the cost as a sales tax increase of 3/8 cents. And I want to reiterate, that is not 38 cents for every dollar that you spend. That is something that I keep hearing over and over again, that the public believes that for every dollar now that they will spend if this passes, the city gets 38 cents. No, it will take $3 spent to equal 1 penny. And I do want to make sure that people understand that. Our current sales tax rate is 8.725%, and that will increase to 9.1% if this is passed. At the bottom of the screen, you'll see various cities, the size of ours, and with this increase in sales tax, if it passes, we will still be in the middle of other towns our size. That's something else that I've heard since our campaign has begun, is that the city of Kirksville sales tax is the highest sales tax in the state of Missouri. Austin and I confirm it's not the highest. We found an 11.5 or 11.3.
Yeah, one of the metros.
Yeah, but, we would still be in line with several of the other cities around us. I don't believe that's going to impact our town, that people will still not shop in our area. What we're going to do, is when we get our debt financing, we're looking at 20 years. The biggest thing that we wanted to do was make sure that we didn't burden our citizens any longer than we have to with our sales tax collections. We're looking at issuing certificates of participation, and they can be issued in certain year increments. Most of the time, people do 25 years. But we looked at the amortization schedule, and we determined that if we went 20 years instead of 25, we would save almost $3.5 million in interest. And we don't like to borrow money. So it was important for us to be able to do this in as short a time as possible to pay it back. The annual collections are looking at $1.5 million if this sales tax passes. The amount of the payment a year will be $1.8 million, which means the city will still be funding $300,000 of that payment for the next 20 years. Now, if prices increase and we collect more than what the debt service payment is,